Welcome back to the OIS Podcast. This is your reminder to register for our upcoming Gene Therapy Innovation Showcase taking place on February 18th. Visit ois.net/events to claim your spot. And while you're there, click Get Involved to submit your information if you'd like to be featured on our podcast. What does it take to be successful within the ophthalmic industry? There isn't just one answer to this question. So sit back and listen to this week's guest break it down. Robert Dempsey is the newly minted CEO at TearClear, an emerging ophthalmic pharma company aiming to disrupt the way current topical medications are delivered to the ocular surface. He sits down with our host, Dr. Paul Karpecki, to share what's next for TearClear and gives us ironclad takeaways from his professional journey that could help you master the space. Let's listen in.
Welcome to the OIS Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Paul Karpecki. I practice in Lexington, Kentucky, and I'm thrilled today to get to interview a great friend, but really someone who can add so much value to the understanding of eye care, and that is Bob Dempsey. Welcome, Bob.
Pleasure, Paul. Really looking forward to this conversation. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for making the time. I know you're sought after. Many people, they look to you. You've been interviewed in OIS in the past. Did an incredible job. You've really have risen. And it seems like overnight, but it's not. I've known you a long time. I know all the way through your background and all that you've achieved. But it is fascinating to see the impact you've had on eye care. And I want to help the listeners understand, what steps are necessary to achieve what you've achieved. I want to hear a little bit about your new role, CEO of TearClear, and what that entails and what that's going to lead to. But let's start with understanding you as a person, growing up as a Bostonian, how life was for you at the beginning and what led you into the field of eye care.
Wow, that's a loaded question. And again, well, it's truly a pleasure to be here. I'm a big fan of OIS and Craig and the team. What they're doing and bringing the ecosystem together is really fantastic. So it's a pleasure to be on the OIS podcast. So a little bit of my background, started my career in way back at Northeastern University, having done a cooperative education in which you're in school for 6 months and working. And I really broke into the pharmaceutical industry very early in my career upon graduating from Northeastern. And I really got my break in the eye care space with Allergan, had a wonderful run at Allergan and had multiple roles and responsibilities. And I look back to those days with a tremendous amount of happiness. Proceeded to take an opportunity with my good buddy, Jerry St. Peter and really had a great opportunity to inspire, in which we really, launched that company into the ophthalmic space and really gave me an opportunity to work in the startup space. From that, we went to Bausch & Lomb and had a wonderful run at B&L and introduced me to some great people, Fleming Onskoff for one of them and Perry Sternberg. And then got an invitation to join Shire and really had a great run at Shire. Went on kind of a risk. I mean, they didn't have an ophthalmology franchise, didn't have any interest in eye care at first. And we were able to really have a great acquisition, and that was the acquisition of Sarcode. And with that, we got the molecule Lifitegrast, and I was able to really build the franchise, both in the U.S. at first and then globally, and apply the playbook across my entire career to building out Shire Ophthalmics, and launch that very exciting franchise. Launched Xiidra into both ophthalmology and optometry, and really had a great run there. Ultimately, we had the opportunity to divest that. And when you look back, initial acquisition, the $160 million, and divesting for over $5 billion all in, was really, a tremendous accomplishment by the team. And I really was fortunate to lead that process. And then fortunately having the opportunity to become the CEO of TearClear and taking, again, a lot of the learnings over my career and apply it here has been very exciting. So that's kind of the high level overview of what I've been able to do, Paul, through the course of my career.
That's fantastic, Bob. And it's true, that was really one of the largest biopharma M&A deals and top 10 of all biopharma in 2019, certainly one of the top deals. ever in eye care. So congratulations. You learn a lot through each of these things that you're involved in and how you add value, and creating that. Do you have more of a preference now after having done everything in large companies, small companies? Do you like the startups? Is that the space that you think you're meant for? Do you feel like it could be? Did you enjoy more of the larger? What's kind of, obviously right now you're in startup mode, but what do you enjoy the most as a leader?
I think the startup mode really is worked out very well for me. I was very fortunate to have the big pharma experience, to have the quote unquote unlimited resources and the ability to get in early and build, which I love doing. But when you get into the startup space, it's a whole nother level of building. You have to be responsible for a lot of things, a lot more than you take for granted in a big pharmaceutical company. But the startup space, working with the board is obviously critical, setting the goals of the organization, the mission, and everything we want to do as we prepare the company for next milestones. And that's really the key in the startup space, is to hit your inflection points, hit your milestones, and really then communicate to the investing community, because that's what it's all about in the startup space, moving the programs forward, achieving those inflection points, ensuring the investors are engaged, and letting them know how you're going to proceed going forward. But the good news doesn't stop there. I've also had the opportunity to join some board positions, and that's where my expertise from a commercial perspective has been very valuable to these organizations. Oftentimes, there is a founding scientist who really is extremely knowledgeable on the R&D side, or more importantly, on the clinical development side. But bringing in that commercial expertise on how to prepare a talk track, how to communicate to the investing community, how to put together a pitch deck is critical, because you need to have a systematic approach to raise money. So as the course of I have enhanced my career and enhanced my skill set, I really believe in the startup environment is really the opportunity to really have my biggest approach.
Yeah, that's true. I think of, your work you've done from early stage venture capital fundraising activities, companies like OIS. I think you played a key role in that. Cyflor, it goes through quite a list, and people I don't think recognize that's another one of your talents and abilities, I should say, as well, in terms of understanding that space, how to develop it, how to do it, how to raise those so the company has a chance to get to the next level. But it's interesting to have an individual who can, have enough knowledge in so many areas. But I think as a startup, you kind of have to, because if you're good in only one, that's the end of the role. You've got to go to the next and to the next. And so what are some of those gems that you've found in startups that have really made a difference? You mentioned the right scientific people. So obviously it's having people around you, but to someone who aspires to do that, who has maybe worked in big pharma, now says, I would love to do kind of what Bob does. What would you say have been some of the keys to the success that you've had thus far, if they were to try to develop it?
Yeah, Paul, it's a great question. And I think it really is twofold. Number one, it's the team. And number two, it's the breadth of knowledge. So I've been very fortunate to work with some great people, Jerry St. Peter and Amir Shojaei, Christy Markowitz. These individuals are subject matter experts in their areas, and having the opportunity to work with them, when it comes to research and development, when it comes to clinical development, there's no one better in the ophthalmic space than Dr. Amir Shojaei. Then from a standpoint of messaging, working with someone like Christy Markowitz to help provide the scientific messaging in a way that can be articulated in an effective manner. And, someone like Jerry's been a great mentor to me. We have very similar personalities, but how he positions his organizations. And I've learned from great people and apply those principles. But there's pretty much all areas of the business I've been fortunate to learn. One that, from a startup perspective, sometimes we take for granted is CMC. So I look at the individual that's on my team at TearClear, Srini Venkatesh, and his level of knowledge and expertise and how he meticulously plans and executes our development plan has been great. Or you take someone like Kevin Hirschfield on my team, how he is so laser focused on operations. Or someone that has a financial background, like a Richard Harrison. These are individuals that are subject matter experts, and I work with them. It's developing the team, and then you develop the goals and objectives and build it going forward. But it all starts to having a broad base of information that allows me to apply that where I am in the startup space.
Well, that's great. What allows you to have the energy level you have? I mean, do you go in with you have a good discipline in how you eat and you stay active and you're still playing hockey?
I occasionally lace them up. Might be skating this weekend, Paul. Just throwing it out there.
Great to hear. Is it just the mindset that you have of, hey, I want to learn as much and network? What things allow you to go at the pace you go continuously for all the years I've known you?
It's probably the competitive nature. I always want to not just meet expectations, but exceed expectations. So very competitive, whether I'm lacing them up on the weekend and playing shinny hockey with the boys or playing old men's softball. I apply those same principles to the work environment. And again, it's the team. And I've been very, very fortunate over the course of my career to work with some wonderful folks. And then you think of the professional community, working with you and the fact that we have a long history working on multiple projects together, whether it's an Ed Holland, who is, obviously one of the top surgeons that we all know, a Dick Lindstrom, a Ben Gaddy, an Art Epstein, and these diverse personalities, and working with all of these individuals to develop those partnerships, but more importantly, the relationships. And it's probably something I cherish more than anything over the course of my career. It's the relationships and the friendships I have with all of these individuals, and how fortunate it is every day that I wake up that I have an opportunity to communicate with some of these guys and gals. You actually pay me to do this, to lead an advisory board or lead a company. It's something I feel very, very fortunate and blessed to have.
I think that plays a role. That's a great answer. Speaking of which, though now I think it's become commonplace, especially in the U.S., and optometry isn't the same globally, but certainly in the U.S., they're responsible for about 88% of eye exams, primary eye care exams, that is, different magnitude. But to be fair, I think you were really the first person that recognized the importance, especially in the area of dry eye disease, for example, of having kind of equal opportunity, making sure that you had the right people. You'd have the same, at least 3 key MD advisors and 3 key OD, or however the number was. You had meetings where the two were together, which actually had this incredible synergy that propelled, Shire and Lifitegrast. Now it's starting to seem like that, but was it difficult? I mean, you had the vision. Was there difficulty in being able to put that in place 5 or 6 years ago? Was there a lot of pushback? How did you know that was something that would make such a difference at the time?
Well, I wish it was 5 or 6 years ago, but it goes way back in my professional career, in which I was very fortunate to have carried the bag and called on ophthalmologists and called on optometrists and looked at how the evolution of eye care was going. So we applied that principle at Inspire with my colleague Joe Boyd, and we did some wonderful things there. We applied it at B&L with Rob Meyering. And then fortunately, as a guy that made all the calls at Shire, I said, we're going to launch into the ophthalmic space. It's going to be 50-50 MD and OD. And we're really going to invest and engage the optometric community. And I remember sitting down with you, Paul, with Art, with Ben, with Jack, and talked about, all right, here's our approach. What do you think? And the reaction we got was very positive. So then we didn't stop there. We would work with Vision Expo East, Vision Expo West, with SECO, with Review, with all of the ecosystem in optometry to let them know who Shire was, what our plan was, and the importance of engaging the optometric community, investing in the optometric community from an educational perspective, and how we were going to approach it. And I remember saying once to you, Paul, you may remember, if optometry is not writing over 60% of all the medications, of all the prescriptions for Xiidra, then we did something wrong. And we knocked the ball out of the park. And I look at how we were going to differentiate ourselves as we entered the market. And we clearly did, because we knocked the ball out of the park from an optometric perspective. Our blocking and tackling was in ophthalmology, but to really differentiate ourselves and engage the optometric community was a key to the success. And as I like to say, why the launch went vertical very, very early on.
That's great. And I think at one point, I think you mentioned that perhaps at the hiatus, the highest point, it was 68% prescriptions or something near that.
Yeah, I mean, you're right on. And remember, Paul, there's 40,000 optometrists.
Yes.
And we had talked very early on in our career about the benefit of therapeutics, and that optometrists that followed the therapeutic model were going to be key to success. So you look at what we're doing at TearClear. We're clearly going to be embracing the optometric community. But now that I have the opportunity with some of these board positions to show investors our approach, for example, with OASIS and the work that Alad is doing, the fact that we have a medical advisory board in which it's 50-50. It's optometry and ophthalmology. It's the new guard, it's the young guard. So we're bringing in this approach across multiple companies that will ensure that they're all successful. Because in the United States, both ophthalmology and optometry have the power to prescribe, and you have to go after these markets equally, invest, and if you do, you can be highly successful.
That's really well said. And I like the fact you brought up the old and new guard. You got the old guard that have incredible experience, invaluable to a company. You mentioned, great names like Dick and Ed and Eric, and on the optometry side, Ben. Yeah. Fortunate to be in that, but there is this young wave of superstars coming up too that we need it, and it'll keep us, the entire profession's viable, and they seem to understand, the role of a surgeon, ophthalmologist, and optometrist, and work very well together also, So I think, that allows for it to, I think, be synergistic to create a whole other level of value and for them to make a difference for these ophthalmic companies, because eye care is so unique in the sense of we're all trying to achieve the best for our patients. And if that means working together, that's what we'll do. If it means, enhancing it means working with industry, which not every medical profession does. We have an incredible environment. And people like you, of course, have played such a key role in that with your networking and your understanding and the inclusion you've allowed. It's exciting.
Yeah.
Tell me about your plans for TearClear. If your vision, what you hope to achieve, not just in all the space of ophthalmics, but really from a business standpoint. What you see happening there, what you're excited about. You've got, of course, a great team. You've got a great product. So go ahead and perhaps describe the product for those who are new to hearing about it. I'm extremely excited about the potential of having drops without BAK being, so focused on the ocular surface for so long. But let me have you describe it and then your goals and vision for the company.
Yeah, so our goal is to disrupt the way topical medications are delivered to the ocular surface. And we want to do that by capturing preservatives before they approach the eye. We know, and it's well documented in the literature, that prolonged use of BAK or preservatives in general will cause detrimental effects on the ocular surface. Our solution is to offer the smart preserve system, and where we keep preservatives where they should be in the bottle, but not on the patient's ocular surface. So as we build this organization, our immediate focus is to bring latanoprost to market that has the smart preserve system, where the preservative is in the bottle, but not on the patient's ocular surface. So from a near-term perspective, we just completed our pre-IND meeting, and now as a team, laser focus on opening up the IND at the midpoint of this year, and then shortly thereafter, executing our registration trial with our first patient, first visit, and move that program along. But the good news doesn't stop there. We want to advance multiple programs, Paul. And on top of that, we're going to have a pre-IND meeting for the combination of timolol and brimonidine. We believe as our first entrees into the space, again, MD, OD, we know optometrists prescribe a lot of glaucoma medications. We want to embrace both of these communities. And as we advance our programs for latanoprost, fall right behind that with a combination, and then being ready from an IND perspective for timolol and brimonidine will set this company up for success. So my vision is to move latanoprost as quickly and aggressively as we can through the FDA process, initiate the registration trials for the combination, and move these other programs forward. We believe in the course of the next 4 to 5 years, we could have a launch every year of a new molecule to the ophthalmic community. That's very exciting, but we don't want to stop there. We also want to think about beyond glaucoma. Where can our smart preserve system be used? Can it be used in anti-infectives, in anti-inflammatories, such as potentially dry eye medication, or the numerous over-the-counter programs that we see for the treatment of dry eye disease? So our goal is to activate our R&D team now to execute on our glaucoma programs, but at the same time, go beyond glaucoma. So we have tremendous goals and objectives that we want to meet to add value to our investors, but also position the company for success.
I love it. Really well said and summarized perfectly. So in the last few moments, any final comments that you may want to make that we didn't cover, or other insights you'd like to share?
I mean, you're very complimentary to the success I've had in my career. And I really want to, if anyone wants to follow my footsteps, a little crazy, but learn as much as you can. Understand medical affairs, understand research and development, understand the regulatory process from the standpoint of what it takes to go through phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, registration trial. And if you can understand that and apply solid business principles from a commercial perspective, you can be successful. And I've been very fortunate, again, over the course of my career, to understand all of these areas. And that's what I think can lead to success. So lastly, continue to build relationships with some of the best and brightest on the optometry side, on the ophthalmology side. And if you do that, you can be successful. Thanks, Paul. I greatly appreciate the opportunity.
Wonderful interview, as I would have expected. Really, maybe even beyond that, came through in so much insight. Thanks for sharing so much that'll help so many people in our industry, those aspiring to do what you're doing, maybe to be a CEO of a startup, those that are in large pharma or small, and what they could look at. There was value for pretty much everyone there. And certainly, I'm grateful we have someone with your understanding in the field of eye care that can contribute, can make a difference, that can help so many of our patients. And you're doing it again today with all the companies you're part of. It's a pleasure to have you on the OIS podcast. And I was honored.
And Paul, you bring up something in closing. I always like to say eye care has been very good to me. It's really super important to give back. So having an opportunity from a philanthropic perspective to work with Sight Life and to work with something I'm extremely passionate about, the Holland Foundation for the Restoration of Sight. I would urge all of us as an ophthalmic community to give back. There's so many things to do out there to give back. I want to close with that little tidbit. Anyone interested in doing that, I would highly urge you to take advantage of this opportunity.
Bob, thank you. Wonderful
Thanks,
interview.
Paul. You're the best.
Thank you too.
Talk to you soon. Thanks.
Thanks for listening, and thank you to our guest, Robert Dempsey, for sharing his journey and how it has informed his vision for TearClear's future. If you enjoy the OIS podcast, please subscribe, rate, and share with your colleagues to help spread the word. Until next week, keep innovating.